Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the panel discussion on alternative payments. We just heard from Nick from Solaris on digital wallets and credit cards. And I think in this session, we're going to talk about how that really fits into the overall mix from a regional and a global perspective, particularly with some of the more established payment mechanisms. But before we get started, I'm going to ask the panelists to just introduce themselves and say a little bit about where they sit in the industry, so we understand the kind of context of the conversation. So, Nick, do you want to start off? I know we just heard from me, but from new people in the room.
For the new, am I on? Yeah, for the new people in the room. So yeah, Nick Dobson, I'm Chief Revenue Officer of Solaris. We're, I guess, a technology player within the card space. I'm, for my sins, an out-and-out payments, card payments, lifetimer. I started 22 years ago in a small software house that wrote credit card authorization payments, and ultimately that was packaged up and sold off to MasterCard probably 10 years later. I've done a number of different startups and things within the space. One of the kind of accolades you look at, I was part of the biggest Series A funding mobile payments business in the UK. Happy to share more on that. Lasted 2 years. They spent all the money quite quickly. So probably a good example of how it doesn't work. And the last sort of 10 years have been working in working quite closely with regulated environments, acquirers, and the technology like Solaris on how we take that to market and really optimize that for customers and merchants alike.
Victoria.
Hi everyone, I'm Victoria Hall, Business Development Director at Dynamic Mobile Billing. We sit in the DCB space and now card because of reasons no doubt we'll go into anyway. But we've been doing DCB for 30 years. But the business has been around for 30 years, certainly. I've been in the industry for 15 years. I've watched it change, grow, shrink, all the necessary things that happens with every single payment method. But yeah, that's where I come from in this supply chain.
Thanks.
I'm Leon from Samedia, the Chief Operating Officer. I'm 32 years, I had to think, 32 years in basically e-commerce. I remember the first payment method what I was working on was IVR billing. Mm-hmm. So basically, people install an icon on the desktop and they use a premium rate number to pay for content. So that's a whole different ball game. Paying is easier now. That's to be short. I also remember, you have these moments in life that there is something completely new in life, which is like cool, great. Like for example, I'm 52 years old. I saw the compact disc coming out, and then the first time you play a CD, it's like, wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing. But I had the same feeling actually with Apple Pay. Like, wow, I couldn't find my card, and a friend said, "You have this thing on your phone, right?" It was quite new, and I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I paid for this cocktail with the phone, and the flow was amazing. It's like tick, boom, done. Mm. And that's what e-commerce is all about. No friction, easy and secure. So that was cool. Samedia is very active in direct carry billing summits. So we are partnering with Vicky as well. She's a supplier to us. And yeah, DCB is also all about no friction. So yeah, that's us.
Good.
Hi.
Hello everyone, I'm Islam Akik, I'm CEO of Universe. We are working in DCB. I'm here in the industry about 23 years. And I'm watching the industry since 2001, starting IVR, then SMS, the next generation, then DCP. And now we are in digital wallets, seeing all these technologies growing like our kids. Yeah. And welcome everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Islam. So I think we've got a really, really interesting mix of the old and the new. And some of us can remember when you were talking interesting about the days of IVR and direct carrier billing was the only way to get content on your phone, whether it was ringtones, which I'm sure many children today would go, what? What's a ringtone?
That's the crazy frog.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we still remember that. But the market is always kind of, evolving, right? I mean, I think the latest media report suggests that the DCB market sort of shrunk about 8% this year. I think that's a global figure. But globally, it's still forecast to kind of grow quite substantially over the next 3 or 4 years. So, my question is, is it shrinking? Is the DCB decline terminal, or is it merely evolving? So, Victoria, maybe you can start.
Yeah, of course. So I haven't seen that stat around the 8%. However, what I focus on is obviously UK and some of our other territories. And each year we do an annual review. There's a market research in the UK. So that's my expertise. And actually, it's predicted to grow in the UK, certainly. In other territories around the world, it's how it's implemented. When I see shrinkage, it's normally because of regulation changes or some kind of impact on the industry. And I've not seen technological, but obviously Apple Pay, Google Pay are changing that now. But certainly from a UK perspective, it's evolving, but optimising. So I think that is going to be a phrase of the day, is in every sense, personalising, optimising, and that's what we're doing from a UK perspective, and in other territories that we're moving into, is we're looking to optimise the best flow for the best conversion. So yeah, from a UK perspective, globally, I'd be very interested to see that report and have a look at it and see where the change has been. But certainly from a UK perspective, it's positive.
Okay. And Leon, you may not have read the report either, but the report seems to be indicating that some of the direct carrier billing growth is coming from, bundling services for, operators store services and goods. I think in Germany, which you may have some knowledge of, the payment agent model, which is emerging, and that's kind of creating growth. Are this move of direct carrier billing to offer, transactions for physical goods, is that where the growth potential is really coming, particularly in Europe?
I don't know. We do digital content, so it's not my ball game. I think part of the growth comes there, but also, I'd like to point out first that there is no right and wrong when it comes to payment methods. Yeah. Well, at least it's not up to us. There are markets where DCB is actually the best frictionless alternative to pay. I mean, it's great, but for example, we are live in many African countries. It's great, but nobody has a Visa or a MasterCard. Yeah. Or an Apple Pay or a smartphone. Yeah. Well, I'm not saying nobody, but people pay with alternative payment methods, of which DCB is one, which is easy to gain access to. You do not have the right, like in Europe, you have the right to go to a bank and I want a bank account, you get a bank account. In Africa, they say, why do you want a bank account? You're not getting a bank account. So, but you can go to a store, you can buy some call credit, and it gives you access to, for example, digital content, to Spotify or to one of our services or to many other things. So there's no right or wrong when it comes to payment methods, because in the end, there's two factors that are important. One is from a marketing perspective. You want as less friction as possible. You want, if people have the intention to buy, that it's easy. It's like, bam, bam, I'm subscribed, or I have it, it's on the way, I bought it. And the other perspective is the perspective of the consumer. The consumer has the preference to pay or have access to a certain payment method, and may the best win. But that's different from market to market. I mean, I heard Ideal as an example, the Dutch direct debit method. It's way more popular than a credit card. Yeah. That's a cultural thing as well. So honestly, my parents, when they opened an account once, like 50 years ago, they got a MasterCard with their account. It goes in the drawer and it stays there, because in Dutch culture, a credit card is like, it's a nasty thing. It sounds like credit, so they keep it there. And only when they go abroad to a weird place, they don't know what payment methods they have access to, and their normal debit card might not work, they're like, let's take this golden card we have in the drawer. Yeah. Only then. Yeah. So every market is different, but two aspects are important. What does the consumer want? And from a marketing perspective, minimum friction. And that's also the cool thing about the evaluation Nick was talking about with the credit card. I mean, that used to be way more complex, like entering a code, entering an expiration date. It's now click, click most of the time, and that's amazing. Yeah. That's even better than the CD. So.
So you're right. It is all about choice for the consumer, and basically, what makes the payment process and experience as simple and fast for them. Islam, in the Middle East market, I understand card penetration is very low. So I guess that you're still seeing predominance of demand for direct carrier billing.
Yes, actually, the market in the Middle East, still the DCB is the king, and I think that there will be growth in this payment method because there is a very low of cards penetration, a lot of complexity of getting a bank account. Even you have a bank account and they close it sometimes, and also it is very complicated environment of having access to the payment channels that is available everywhere. So the direct carrier billing is the best way, actually, the easiest way, the smoothest way of doing the payment of the digital goods and services. Especially you have a multiple point of sale of topping up your mobile and just use it. Mm-hmm. This is so easy to make it. From the other side, there are a lot of cases happening in digital wallets. The operators there and a lot of institutions there just launched the digital wallets as a trend, and they concentrated on the technology itself, but they not concentrated on the use cases of the digital wallets. And they invest a lot of money, then they found themselves that they are facing a failed business case. And most of them, they sold out, or they shut it down, or something like this. More than this, in the Middle East, the regulatory environment is also very complicated and changing rapidly. Mm-hmm. According to decisions, you just wake up in the morning and you find new decisions and new orders, and that just close this, open this, that's it. And so the market is not stable. Still the DCB is doing great. I think that there will be growth in this market.
Okay, interesting. And Nick, in your interesting presentation regarding sort of digital, the growth of mobile wallets and digital wallets, do you think that the emergence of more and more alternative models, I mean, you mentioned it, Victoria, about the kind of boom and bust nature of direct carrier billing. Do you think alternative payment models coming into the market, giving consumers greater choice, is likely to reduce some of that kind of boom and bust that we've seen in mobile payments over the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I guess in some ways, yes. I think we've all agreed on here, and we've spoken that I think there's a place for everything in the market, and each individual sort of thing. And I completely agree with how Leon kind of positioned it. To be honest, it's all about the consumer, and we're all consumers ourselves. And I had very similar experience to Leon about how adopting Apple Pay, and you look at the different trends of why things happen. It's all about user experience. Mm. So if you look back even to contactless payments in the UK, I was quite heavily involved in the launch and kind of bringing that to market. And for 10 years, it didn't really go anywhere. We even incentivized companies to take it and got lower charges and things as an acquiring perspective. And it wasn't until it got taken by TfL, which is the tube and all the transport for London, that it became that pinnacle. And that's how I transitioned. Exactly you, got to go on the tube to a meeting and went, I forgot my wallet. I was one of those geeks that knew my card number off the top of my head, so tapped it into my phone, registered, done, tapped, off we go. And that was it. I've never gone back. So I think to your point, it's all about the consumer now, and they will dictate to us how they want to do it. You can, the best idea in the world can come out. It can be the cheapest. It can be the best. But unless a consumer adopts it and wants to use it, it will never happen. And I think sometimes you look at that and trying to think of an example, but there can be the best ideas in the world and think that's an awesome product. But if people don't use it, then it never happens. So I think to the point and the wider here is it will all be dictated by the consumer and their preference in those individual locations.
Yes. I'd like to refer to your presentation. I hope everybody was here back then. Anyway, I want to highlight this one. You said, okay, the consumer decides, and now we have the data also to analyze what the consumer actually wants. So just also to stop the discussion, what is a better or an alternative payment method, we can see, for example, for me, if I'm on my phone, I probably use this payment method. But if I'm on my desktop or on my smartwatch, I probably use that payment method. Or in the morning, I prefer to pay this way. In the evening, I prefer to pay that way. I mean, we know about consumers' preferences. We work with the data. And the idea is that if we all go to the same page on an e-commerce website, I get a different payment method on top than you because you have other preference to pay, maybe.
Yeah.
It might be DCB, it might be, I don't know, a German scratch card with a balance on it, to call another very specific market. Or a mobile wallet solution, which is very growing in Africa, for example. Now that's the cool thing. From a marketing perspective, we can work with that, what does the consumer want, and then offer that payment method. And on top of that, of course, if we offer them 10 payment solutions, either we pick their preference or at least as less friction as possible. So it doesn't matter.
I completely agree with you. And I think that hyper-personalisation is where it's going to come into, and I think that's probably the next phase of where we're going to enter is even to the point where, I'll admit to this, I'm a Blackburn fan, and unfortunately, I go to checkout, they know that, and my checkout page is blue and white. It finds me. It's all of those sorts of things of, wrapping it up in that personalisation of, and reward of working with that brand or that operator and things like that. So I think, I think you're right, and that's
to highlight the power. Actually, I give another example. We know also people's preference can change over the course of the month. Like you will see, they're highly likely to pay, like for example, in very typical direct debit markets, they are very highly likely to pay from that direct debit balance when their salary is just being paid. Towards the end of the month, their preference will change to buy now, pay later, or a credit card.
Yeah.
So, and gradually, you get to know your customer. And those preferences, for example, is an opportunity for a service provider as Solaris, because you also know the behavior from customers at my competitors or at other shops or other e-commerce points. So you, as a supplier, would be able to give me some insight in like, oh, we know this customer, he's likely going to want to pay with this one at the 24th of the month.
Yeah.
So lots of opportunities there.
Yeah, and even to the point where, and in fact, we were having this conversation over breakfast this morning, and was kind of discussing with our CTO as well, and to the point where time of the month might dictate what method you do, because actually from a conversion perspective, there's lower cost. Yeah. And I'll use that, and having done some work in the automotive space in the UK, you might have a balance to pay on a car payment, and you might offer open banking at the start of the month because it's the cheapest way to do it. You might not get it, and then towards the end, you then start chasing it, and you start to offer credit and debit base, and there's a higher cost of doing that, but an easier way of conversion. So, I completely agree with you. That hyper personalisation into the different markets and how it works it's going to be super interesting, and exactly what we're looking at of how we do that, how we control that, how we provide people like yourselves the platforms to be able to offer that to their merchants and their customers and cardholders.
For as long as I can remember, the carriers themselves have tried to brand payment services, and we all know the ones that have kind of emerged and failed and had very poor consumer uptake and not very much advertising and marketing behind them. Pay for it, for example. But in regions such as yourselves, Islam, where card payments are very low, is the carrier billing model, particularly as for physical goods, which seems to be growing? We talked a little bit before about what's happening in Germany. Can financial services status be brought to direct carrier billing still? Is the opportunity now maybe greater than ever, given that there is more payments mechanism in the mix? And so, for instance, in countries like Egypt and other places in the Middle East, there's opportunity for that market to grow, right?
Actually, still we are early of talking about this because there is a lot of complications concerning taxation and custom, and still the laws there is not updated. Maybe in some countries like UAE, but the other countries still. And a lot of countries still not putting the laws of e-commerce on the table to discuss it.
Right.
So actually, it's very hard to talk about this now, because if you are going to operate and deploy the direct billing in this, you know that there is taxation included in the balance of the end user, especially if you are talking about the prepaid. Then you are going to have a double taxation on this. Also, there are a lot of problems concerning a customer. So more than this, the revenue sharing model or the business model itself need a lot of work actually. If you look to the telco operators, they are considering the direct billing is one of their mainstreaming. And if you are going to physical goods, then you can't have the same business model running for the digital service to run it on the physical goods. So if it is in $100, this will cost me. It can't be cost me $150 because you are adding the taxes, you are adding the revenue sharing, you are more than this the payment cycle for the merchant himself. If you are using any payment channel to buy a physical good, then you are paying him on the spot instantly. But if you are going in the same business model that we are using now with telco operator, then you're talking about the billing cycle, maybe the shortest billing cycle, you're talking about 60 days, which is very long, very, very long payment cycle. It will not be accepted by the merchant himself. Also, the issue of the prices and the cost on the end user also will be very high. So who is going to carry this cost? The telco operator, the merchant, or the buyer? This is the problem. And so it needs a lot of work. Actually, you need to work a framework, a complete framework for this, and it will be joint between the telco operators and the regulators, the governments, the taxation institutions. A lot of people must work on this to get it done and use it.
Yeah.
This is the one.
And just to dive back into that kind of brave new world of digital wallets, Nick, you talked about the trillions of dollars that companies like Apple are processing. It's not a huge leap of faith to say that they'll start to integrate digital IDs soon, because national identity cards have been pretty commonplace in a lot of countries. In the UK, it's always been a contentious issue. Yet we all have a digital ID of some form. It's not, as you say, it's not a huge leap of faith to think that the digital wallet providers will integrate IDs into their wallets. And then that kind of creates a kind of driver for more acceptance of those kind of services or mechanisms. Do you think that will increase the market, will grow the market further, do you think that will introduce more challenges maybe around acceptance?
No, I think it definitely will grow. Yeah, it's a good question. You look at it already and it's starting to happen. So I don't know if I've done some, recently sold a house and you have to do ID and V and things like that. Now there's applications that can leverage the secure mechanism within the phones, and you can tap it on your passport and it authenticates your ID, and then you scan and things like that. So we're already there. And you look at a lot of the neobanks as well entering the market, especially in the UK, where you could open one, and I did it a while ago. I entered a Revolut because I was traveling and I thought it was a good idea. I was sat in the corner of a bar waiting for someone to join me and did it. It's kind of those sorts of journeys. So yeah, I definitely agree it's going to come. And again, I think that will only improve adoption of smartphones, whether that's good or bad. And I think the younger generation are going to be there to tell us whether that's the right thing. But I think it's a logical step of kind of going through and how things will kind of evolve. You look at it now, and I know Victoria will echo this, as a UK passport holder at the moment, life is quite a challenge going around Europe, and I travel a lot, and why do you have to have a physical stamp in your passport? And they check them as well. And I've entered a couple of times different countries where I've come in from a European country, and they're like, well, how did you get here? You haven't got a stamp. And it's kind of like, you kind of looking at this digital world where we're still stamping passports, and you think, well, there's got to be a better way to do it, because the mechanisms are secure within the devices now, and there's got to be a way to do that. As with all of this, there will be markets that adopt it better and are more open to that, then you'll have markets or people that are, well, I don't want that level of data being held in that environment. Because ultimately, who holds it? Where is it held? And is it secure?
And can it be transported across border?
And yeah, but it's also, in the digital world, there's always someone out there trying to do something bad. It's always been there. So if my data resides there, is it safe?
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of comes back to card fraud. It's not always about someone stealing. It's the fraudsters targeting stuff, making stuff happen, and they'll always be one step ahead. So I think there's a balance of how that will happen, but I think logically that thing will happen over time.
And this may be a question for Victoria and Leon. You know, the history of direct carrier billing has, had a lot of bad actors at times, and that seems to have been cleaned up, particularly over the last, 5 or 6 years. With anti-fraud services is really helping the environment. But online fraud is obviously, continues to be, I think in the UK it's not even registered under the kind of official crime figures, yet it's actually 41% of all crime. With greater digital services brings kind of greater digital risk, right? From, AI, scammers using quite advanced techniques. How can consumers be protected? I suppose my question is that the responsibility of the payment providers? Is it the responsibility of the banks? Who ends up footing the bill if things go wrong?
Well, I've had personal experiences with digital issues, and I think the responsibility is with everybody. I think you've got to make sure you're not signing up to things that you don't know.
Yeah.
For example, I've had an issue with Face ID on my phone. And there's all these types of things where people can go in at any stage. So I think it's the consumer being aware, and them being aware through education, but also the payment providers, etc., also having the systems in place to be able to support the consumers to make the right decisions. So I think it's scary. It's scary everything being digital.
Yeah.
I must say, having your passports, opening bank accounts, but I must say it's very convenient at the same time.
Yeah.
And exactly what you said, I've opened up bank accounts really easily. I've checked for the first time I did a passport check, and it was just place your phone over the passport. I was like, well, I didn't know you could even do this. So, it is the way the world's going, and I think it's just responsibility on all sides. And as the next generation comes through, I think it's maybe something that's got to be included in schools, which it probably already is, but to a more, as part of their everyday, it has to be instilled in them from an early age, I think.
Yeah. Do you see much fraud in the Middle Eastern market?
Yeah, a lot.
Is that a rhetorical question?
Actually, it is. If we think in this matter from another point of view, it's the responsibility of the telco operator and the aggregator or the service provider. Actually, they are looking to doing revenue. They are not looking to add the value for the end user. And this is a big point, actually. So the anti-frauding starts from evaluating the content, evaluating the content provider. From there, you are going to fight the frauding, actually. And so they are not evaluating the service, if it's added value or not for the end user. Also, they are not evaluating the content provider himself. Actually, we are using a payment method. Why you are not knowing your customer? And also using anti-frauding systems or scanner tools. It's just a trend. I'm running a scanner tool and that's it. They are informing us that there is. So they are not managing the issue. They are mitigating it, and there's a big difference actually.
Yeah.
This is for the frauding, and it will continue. And actually, this is a disaster because we are gambling with a big value, which is the market. We, as service providers and the telco operators, we are gambling with a big market, with the whole market. Because at the end of the day, if there is a pressure from the customer or the end user on the regulator, they are going just to close the market, and that's it. Done. A market worth about hundreds of millions of dollars, it just shut down. That's it, because we did not manage this issue from a starting point. We're just gambling, you know. This is the point. So also there is no framework for managing this market. All of the markets are not regulated in a way to have the value for the end user. Because of this, you see some countries is not actually, you don't have a penetration of the directly billing in these countries, or some countries they are not using it at all, because they are actually well regulated, because you know that if there is a value for the end user, then go for it. If not, then will not go for it. You know, reverting back to the digital identity, I think that you talk about this. Digital identity, if we believe that there will be a digital transformation, we have to start from there. It's the base, it's the foundation of everything digital. You know, without digital identity, you can't move. And to move in this, you need a very, very advanced cybersecurity. Because of this, the countries are not still trust the digital. They are trust the stamps. When you go to elections, they want to have handwriting, etc. So the governments they are not trusting the digital issues, the digital platforms, you know. Because of this, they are still using the stamp. So if we would like to go in this digital transformation, we have to build the digital identity. To build the digital identity, we have to we need to have a very, very advanced cybersecurity, because it's everything. Digital identity is everything, which is almost, it's industry by itself. If we have built the digital identity, then just if the government and build this and store everyone digital identity at your side, then I'm a business, insurance, banks, whoever it is, I will shortcut all of the story of getting your bank account. You just count the bank account, just put your fingerprint, that's it, done, your all information there in the bank, and then know your customer, everything, compliance system, everything is connected. And you are well connected because you have a digital identity. So it's the digital identity itself, it will be a revenue streaming also for some companies and for the governments. For the banks, for the insurance, for the airports, for everything, you have digital, then you can work everything, because it's trusted. He's the same person. He's doing everything. So you are on board. But are we trusting the digital? This is the point. If you trust the digital, then you have digital identity, then you have cyber, etc., the emerging technologies, and things will work very fine, very smooth, and very fast to digital transformation. Still, all the people talking about digital transformation, but they are not trusting the digital, you know? This is the point.
And it's kind of logic, because, I mean, your wallet can be stolen, and you lose money, but your identity, that's the one thing that's you, that you don't want that to be stolen. You do not want anybody else to use your identity. And I loved your example, because this is exactly what happened in the Netherlands. The government rolled back from a voting computer to a red pencil and a big paper, like the good old, because there was something might not be okay. And the government was like, okay, we roll back, we go back to the pencil, and this will happen. This is why we probably still have stamps in 50 years in many countries. And it also depends on the country with many things, like to go back to the discussion, or your question about DCB, the complexity of DCB is that compared with MasterCard, it is basically the same standard everywhere, basically the same regulations. Some regions have a better security or a slightly different flow. They have 3DS or not, but it's basically all the same. It works the same for every customer in every country. And regulatory-wise, it's also very simple. If you compare with DCB, the ecosystem is massively complex. The fraud you were talking about, yeah, that happens there, but in other markets, it's very well regulated, like the UK, for example, there's no problem. So DCB is growing up, but it's going slowly and not globally, because it's not one company like MasterCard or Visa, but it requires cooperation. For a starter, you speak about more than 400 mobile network operators worldwide, and they all want their own way. They all want, they want to protect it this way, they want to flow that way. So it's a massive ongoing evaluation, which is way more complex than in the credit card ecosystem. That's one of the advantages of the credit cards, for example.
Yeah. So I think we're kind of coming to the end of our time, but obviously the opportunity, growing payments, it's a bigger world, it's a bigger pie, right? There's room for everyone. There's room for digital wallets and credit card payments. There's room for direct carrier billing, but with opportunity comes challenges, and there's more fraud opportunities, and it seems like policymakers and all the kind of parties to transactions have to work together to focus on prevention too. Before we wrap up, does anyone in the audience have any questions for the panel?
I'm from...
Just the microphone, please.
I'm from Text 121 USA, Florida. We are so backward. As a consumer over there, we've only just got the tap, but you still have to put your PIN number in for any amount. Yeah. We just don't have any of this technology. Anyone coming from the USA to here is going to think, oh my God, what do I do? Some of them are still using traveller's checks. I'm going to take traveller's checks, and I'm like, oh, okay. Even the banking system as well. Here, when I use Nationwide or Lloyds, I've got to do double checks and put in this, that, and that. Over there is no checks. If I'm going to send money to Helen, there's no checks. It's kind of crazy. We are so backward. I mean, we've only just got food delivery. We've only just got Walmart delivering our food if we want it. And it just blows my mind when I come home, to England, like what we're missing over there. There's just so much money that could be made. I'm not sure about New York, whether they've gone forward, but in Florida, we are just, dumb. We're just not moving forward with technology. It's really frustrating, totally, especially with the company.
It feels like a big it's very cash orientated as well, the US, isn't it? I mean, when I go every year, and I spend time in New Jersey. I spend some time over the summer, and everybody that I talk to uses cash. They like cash. They like to have the cash in their hand. They like using vouchers and discounts, and I think that's been the same for a long time. And I think it's very difficult to create the change and get the kind of momentum to get people to use other and it's a trust thing as well. It feels like a trust thing. People don't want to give money to the government and things like that, so they like to keep their hard-earned cash for themselves, and it just feels like there's other things that's going on underlying.
I just bought a house in the UK and they gave me a Certus thing, so I downloaded it onto my US phone. It was like I'm like, so I had to download it onto my UK phone, and it went through, and it scanned the passport and all that. But again, we have nothing like that there, nothing. So I'm not sure, I'm a real estate agent there as well, and it's all still pen and paper and all that good stuff.
And I guess in the US, you've got a lot of regulation at the federal level, at the local level, at the state level, which kind of makes some of that integration a little bit harder, maybe to...
Well, we have no adult, none.
Yeah.
We have no adult services, there's no advertising on the TV. We're governed by the Indians with Seminole, with Immokalee, like the casinos and stuff like that. We're just governed. You cannot, open up your own little like gambling thing. All our local stores that opened up like a little mini casino were all raided, shut down. You can't use money. You can pay for to go in the casino and use it, but you won't get money back. You'll get a voucher. Right. And now they've just shut everybody down. We've got all drug stores opening up, but that's okay. But you can't gamble. It's just a weird country, totally. Thank you.
Good finish.
Let's hope it doesn't get weirder, right? Well, let's hope not. Does anyone else have a question before the panel, before we wrap up? Yeah, one more.
Firstly, Leon, Zunaid, nice to meet you, and thanks for the invite. Just and I'll set my bias aside, just to come back to the bullishness on DCB, in case study in South Africa. There's depending on which stats you believe, there's either 11% or 7% credit card penetration, which means that those is the potential addressable audience. Then you add trust, so you divide that by 2, and then the person that actually finds the willingness to find a product that they're willing to spend on. So the market in terms of its penetration is quite big, and this is why TCB, I think, still has its relevance. What I'd love to sort of hear about is, you spoke about regulation, but regulation in terms of actual physical products, because the regulator in South Africa has a very small mandate in terms of what they allow for DCB purchases, and I'd love to sort of hear that. And then maybe just, Nick, I'm trying to place my head in terms of where the interoperability of crypto comes in down the line. And is there any sort of use case, not necessarily immediately, but yeah.
Cool. There's quite a lot there. I can start with the crypto side. And, I was thinking about that earlier. And, yeah, maybe you look at Apple and Google Pay and things, and behind it, big on the card rails. Logically, yeah, the technology that sits behind and blockchain stuff does fit quite well into that. Again, it comes down to consumer trust. I look at it and play with it, but I'm very cautious of it. And you look at things, and so I think the technology fits, but I think it's got a long way to come before it kind of gets there. And you look back to Facebook, start to try to build their own currency and using crypto, and it didn't really kind of evolve into anything right. The stable coins starting to get a lot more penetration and understanding, but again, it's pockets of the world, so it's how do you get that, and it all runs on a digital base. If you don't have a way to access it, do you fall back to cash? Which is what was said about the US and things like that. So I think, there's always going to be multiple options, and I think it's going to be driven by pockets of different countries where, unfortunately, we are so diversely different across the globe in what we have and what we have access to. And having worked in businesses where we've had a lot of resource in South Africa, it's dramatically different. I mean, I think I saw stats that less than 15% have got the internet. So it's, I don't know, 50, so probably higher. But yeah, still, I mean, with that, and we should go to the UK or most of Europe, and I can imagine that's 95% do. So you're always going to have those challenges in different markets. But the technology, there's definitely a place for it. It's just going to be used in the right way. At the moment, it's ultimately it's gambling at this stage, because you look at it, there's nothing really behind it. There's no asset behind it, other than when you look at the stable coins, which are going to start linking to specific currency values and things. That's where I think there could be some really good use cases for it.
We've massively overrun our time, and I think lunch is calling, so it just remains for me to thank you for your attention, to thank Islam, Leon, Victoria, Nick. Thank you for your inputs, and that's been great. And please show your appreciation before we run off for lunch. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.